The council chamber was built over a geothermal river, yet a ribbon of cold crossed my boots before the first witness spoke. No vent was open, and the empty space beside Envoy Ictor Doom was breathing winter. I tightened both hands around the witness ember. Its dark alloy shell rested against my palms, warm enough to feel alive. Amber light moved beneath its surface in slow branching lines, each one carrying a fragment of Joriad memory. A child's first view of the red terraces, a mason pressing a family mark into wet foundation clay, an elder teaching the names of seasonal winds that no longer crossed Joriad land. Beside me, Mecha Tull watched those lights with the rigid attention of someone guarding the last open door to a burned house. "You felt it?" Mecha asked. Her voice was low. Joriad throats produced words with a faint vibration that made their speech sound as though another, older voice rested beneath it. "The cold." She nodded. I glanced across the circular hearing floor. Envoy Doom stood at the ACRAD delegation rail in formal black layers cut close to his long torso. His skin reflected the chamber's amber illumination like polished bone. He was speaking with an aide, but his eyes rested on me. Then his gaze dropped to the ember. The cold strip vanished. A vibration passed through the stone beneath my boots as the geothermal regulation system adjusted. Warmth returned so quickly that I might have blamed the sensation on nerves. I had spent 12 years working with displaced communities, damaged monuments and cultures forced to explain themselves to governments that had already decided what counted as evidence. Nerves were familiar. Cold air that moved against the ventilation pattern was not. Curator Holt, speaker in O-Call called. The council's presiding classifier occupied the highest seat in the chamber. He belonged to the Veer, a narrow-bodied species whose 4 dark eyes gave the impression that every statement was being examined from several directions at once. "Bring the object forward." Mecha's hand hovered beneath my elbow without touching it. Her fingers trembled. The council had called the witness ember an object, an artifact, and, in one procedural filing, a culturally significant illumination device. The Joriad called it what remained. I carried it down the 3 steps to the sunken witness platform. Hundreds of delegates surrounded us in rising rings. Interpretation booths lined the walls. Above them, the council's biological monitoring lattice shimmered behind translucent panels, measuring stress responses, toxin exposure, and violent intent. I had asked why such a system was active during a territorial hearing. Call had answered that human participants were present. He had phrased it politely. Earth's admission records described us as cooperative omnivores with retained pursuit instincts. Several council members had translated that into a simpler conclusion. Humans were safe until our primitive biology took control. My task was to discuss cultural continuity. Apparently, my heartbeat was a matter of interstellar security. I placed the ember in the cradle at the center of the platform. Its light brightened, casting thin amber paths across Mecha's face. "State your role," Call said. Yara Holt, Cultural Reconstruction Curator with the Earth Cooperative Heritage Office. Military affiliation. None. Security training. Emergency evacuation certification, and a course on protecting damaged objects from flooding. A few delegates shifted. Call's upper eyes narrowed. "You are aware that the ACRAD government disputes the historical validity of the device. The ACRAD government disputes the people who made it." Doom lifted his head. Mecha drew a quiet breath. Call tapped one long finger against his console. "The council requests precision. So do the Joriad." Amber light climbed from the ember and formed a 3-dimensional impression over the platform. A settlement appeared. Not a map, not yet. A memory. Red stone dwellings rose along a terraced valley. Wind moved through silver grass. Someone carried water in a clay vessel and laughed when a child ran past too quickly. The memory had no single viewpoint because the ember stored relationships rather than isolated recordings. It showed what families remembered together. The image trembled. Mecca placed 2 fingers against the shell. The settlement stabilized. Doom watched without expression. "The projection is emotionally persuasive," he said. "That does not make it historical." Mecca looked at him. "My mother was born there." "Your mother claimed she was born there." The ember's light flared beneath her fingers. Call raised a hand before she could answer. "The council will examine verifiable correspondences. Curator Holt, explain your methodology." I began with the construction marks buried in the ember's oldest memories. The same symbols had appeared beneath modern ACRAD administrative foundations during a sealed infrastructure survey. The ACRAD government had classified the survey, then stated that no pre-ACRAD settlement had existed in the region. Doom's lower jaw tightened. The cold returned. This time it passed behind me. I turned. Nothing occupied the steps leading from the witness platform. No open door, no moving delegate. Only a shimmer where warm chamber air should have been uniform. I faced Call. "Speaker, are phase concealment systems permitted inside the vault?" A low murmur traveled through the delegate rings. Doom's expression remained composed. Call consulted his display. "No active concealment system has been detected." "That wasn't my question." "No," he said, "they are prohibited." Doom leaned toward his microphone. "Is the human suggesting an invisible attacker has entered a secured council chamber?" "I'm saying the air beside your delegation is colder than the floor around it." Humans possess a documented tendency to interpret ambiguous movement as predatory threat. Call looked toward me. "Do you?" "Do I what?" "Interpret uncertainty as prey or danger." The question annoyed me more than it should have. Perhaps because I had answered versions of it since Earth joined the Council. Perhaps because Mecca was gripping the edge of the platform hard enough to pale her fingers, while recognized governments debated whether her childhood counted as evidence. Call continued. "Council records describe a human state involving narrowed attention, reduced hesitation, and pursuit fixation. Your scholars call it a predatory response. Our scholars call many things by names they later regret. What makes that response awaken?" Around us, delegates waited. Several watched me rather than the ember. I could have given them the approved explanation: threat assessment, adrenal regulation, protective grouping, evolutionary inheritance shaped by social cooperation. Instead, I looked toward the empty patch beside Doom. "I'd rather answer after we know why your chamber has a cold shadow." Doom spread his hands. "A dramatic refusal. A practical delay." Call signaled for the hearing to continue. The first sequence of technical evidence appeared above the ember. The remembered settlement sank into the earth, its foundations aligning with geothermal channels beneath the present ACRAD capital. Mecca guided the projection while I identified material correspondences: volcanic aggregate, mineral salts, the angle of heat-cut drainage trenches. The image expanded. An ancient Joriad foundation line passed directly beneath the current ACRAD Council residence. Doom moved. Only one step. Backward. The chamber lights went out. The ember vanished from the cradle. Mecca screamed. A body struck mine in the dark. I caught the edge of the platform, twisted, and heard something slice through the air where my throat had been. Emergency strips flashed red along the floor. For a fraction of a second, I saw the attacker. A human-shaped distortion stood between Mecca and the steps, wrapped in darkness that bent the red light around it. The witness ember glowed inside that distortion like a heart behind smoke. The figure turned toward Mecca. Every sound made by the humans in the chamber stopped. The change inside me arrived without anger. That surprised me later. In the moment, it felt like a door closing against a storm. My breathing slowed. The red chamber widened. I saw Mecca on one knee, Doom's delegation rail, 3 exits, the angle of the attacker's shoulders, the weak amber glow leaking through the cloak, the cold plume falling from its right side, the distance between my hand and a broken section of the evidence cradle. Someone shouted for security. The invisible figure raised a weapon toward Mecca. Call's voice came through the darkness. "What is happening?" The biological lattice ignited above us. White letters appeared across every wall. Predatory response detected. A second line formed. Species human. A third. Multiple subjects. Several delegates recoiled from the nearest humans. They were looking the wrong way. Speaker Call's earlier question returned to me. What makes the human predator wake? The attacker's weapon aligned with Mecca's chest. I answered, "That." I tore the broken cradle bar from the floor and threw it. The metal struck the attacker's wrist. The shot burned past Mecca and shattered the witness rail. Before the attacker recovered, 3 human civilians moved. Elian Moss, a schoolteacher seated with the visiting witnesses, pulled 2 Joriad children behind the stone benches. Ruth Calder, an earth maintenance contractor, looked once at the floor vents and sprinted toward the thermal controls. Juno Park, who had been serving heated drinks near the rear gallery, shoved an entire service unit across the western exit. None of us called to one another. None of us needed to. The invisible attacker ran. The ember's glow streaked up the northern steps. I followed. Alien security officers poured through the eastern door as the chamber's identification system marked a suspect moving west. They went after the false signal. I saw the cold trail heading north. "Curator Holt," Call shouted. The attacker reached the upper gallery. I was 8 strides behind. A council guard swung into my path. "Remain in the chamber. He has the ember. Security is tracking him. Security is tracking what he told it to track." The guard grabbed for my shoulder. I stepped past him and entered the geothermal access corridor. Heat pressed against my face. The passage curved downward through black stone reinforced with copper ribs. Pipes hummed behind the walls, carrying energy from the river below to the city above. The corridor was empty. I stopped running. My pulse remained heavy but controlled. Warm air moved past my cheeks. Then it broke around a narrow pocket of cold near the right wall. The attacker was waiting. I dropped. A blade passed over my head. Its edge appeared only where condensation gathered across it. I drove my shoulder into the cold space. The cloak flashed. For an instant I saw Doom's face. His eyes widened. He had expected a frightened civilian chasing stolen history. He had found something else. The cloak darkened again. A hand caught my collar and hurled me against the wall. Pain burst through my back. The ember struck stone inside the concealment field. Its amber light flickered. Doom leaned close enough that I felt the cold air spilling from the cloak. "You should have remained an expert," he whispered. "You should have checked the vents." A deep alarm sounded. Ruth had reached the thermal system. Heat surged through the corridor. Doom's outline appeared as a rippling void. He released me and ran deeper into the complex. My wrist display activated with an emergency council channel. Call's face appeared in one corner, divided by static. Curator Holt, the chamber feed has acquired the lower thermal network. We can see movement, but identification remains uncertain. You're watching us. The full council is watching. Behind him, delegates crowded the central display. Humans remained positioned around the Joriad witnesses, while alien security teams argued over the corrupted tracking grid. The biological warning still covered the upper chamber wall. Human predatory response, uncontrolled escalation risk. The phrase remained attached to us, even as Elian covered a wounded delegate with his own body. Tell security to stop following identity markers, I said. Track heat loss. Call hesitated. Doom's cold wake curved toward the exchange levels. He has compromised your system, I said. Every official signal is bait. And what are you following? The part he can't persuade. I ended the channel and moved downward. The pursuit changed. Until then, Doom had chosen the route. He selected doors, corridors, and shadows. I followed the cold he left behind. At the first cooling junction, I opened the manual panel and sealed the intake. At the second, I used my curator's access key to lock the artifact preservation vent. The system protested that cultural materials might be exposed to unstable temperature. I accepted the warning. At the third junction, I found a maintenance strip glowing orange against the wall. Ruth's voice came through my display. I can control 3 levels from here. Close every cooling point below me. That'll make the exchange corridor dangerous. For the cloak. For anyone. Keep the human-safe routes open. A pause. Then already mapped them. The display showed the corridor network. Ruth marked safe paths in amber. The council feed remained connected. I could hear delegates' questioning call in the background. One demanded that the humans be restrained. Another pointed out that the humans were the only people moving civilians away from danger. Call said nothing. Doom reached the next junction. His cloak shimmered into view. He had slowed. Phase concealment worked by absorbing the surrounding thermal pattern, storing it, and projecting a false continuation around the wearer. In a stable environment, the user became nearly invisible. Inside a heating corridor with every cooling point sealed, the system had nowhere to release what it absorbed. Doom needed to find cold. I intended to decide where he found it. Yara. Mecca's voice reached me through the emergency channel. I stopped at the top of a narrow bridge. Below, the geothermal river shone through reinforced crystal channels. It was not water. Molten mineral slurry moved under pressure, bright enough to paint the ceiling gold. Mecca, are you hurt? My shoulder, nothing else. The children. Safe. A second voice entered the channel. Elian. Someone opened a service door beneath the witness platform. There may be a return route into the chamber. Doom was not simply fleeing. He was circling back. He still needed Mecca dead. The Ember contained relationships, but only a Joriad custodian could establish which memories shared a common source. Without Mecca, the Akrad delegation could call the projection corrupted or misinterpreted. The object was evidence. Mecca was meaning. Move her, I said. We tried, Elian answered. The chamber doors have sealed. Doom had closed the trap before entering it. I looked down the bridge. At the far end, the air bent. He had stopped running too. He understood that I had recognized his route. My fear remained. It simply lost authority. I removed my outer coat and wrapped it around the heated maintenance strip. The fabric warmed immediately. Then I threw the bundle across the bridge toward the open eastern passage. It landed and rolled, leaving a bright human-sized trail on the thermal display. I stepped onto the western maintenance ledge. The ledge was narrower than my boots. The geothermal river moved beneath me. On the council feed, my false heat trail appeared as a clear running figure. A security officer shouted, "Target moving east." Call answered no. For the first time, certainty entered his voice. That is the lure. The cold distortion at the far end of the bridge turned toward the heated coat. Doom followed it. Slowly. He knew I was trying to direct him. He did not yet know where I was. I moved along the ledge with my palms against the wall. Every instinct demanded speed. Speed would make noise. The old part of me, the part the council feared, understood patience. Predators did not always charge. Some became the absence their target failed to notice. Doom reached the false trail. His blade cut through my coat. The maintenance strip broke, scattering heat across the floor. The thermal display flashed white. Doom's cloak adjusted. For half a second, it overcompensated. His entire body appeared in sharp blue outline. I stepped from the ledge behind him. He turned too late. I struck his elbow with both hands. The ember fell from his cloak and rolled toward the edge of the bridge. Doom hit me across the face. I dropped to one knee. He lunged for the ember. I caught his ankle. His cloak flickered as he kicked free. The ember reached the bridge edge and stopped against a raised bolt. Amber light spread across the floor. A memory opened. The bridge vanished beneath a projected Joriad city. Not the ancient settlement we had shown in the chamber. A later memory. Akrad machines tore family marks from foundation stones. Surveyors carried them into transport vehicles. Government workers changed district names on public maps, while Joriad residents watched from behind security barriers. Doom froze. Mecca gasped through the channel. That sequence was sealed, she said. The cloak strike had damaged the ember's containment layer. More memories spilled into the corridor. A government chamber appeared over the bridge. Doom stood inside it years younger, receiving a list of sites scheduled for removal. Documents glowed beside him. Buried residences. Collapsed shrines. Thermal channels, whose Joriad names had been replaced by Akrad administrative numbers. The council saw everything. Doom threw himself toward the ember. I reached it first. His blade descended. I raised the alloy shell. The edge struck the casing and sent a crack through the light. Mecca cried out as though the blade had touched her. Doom drove me backward. You think memory creates ownership, he hissed. No. I forced the blade aside. People do. He struck my ribs. Air left my lungs. The ember slipped from my hands. Doom stepped over me and lifted it. His cloak had begun to fail visibly. Heat rolled beneath his skin. Dark vessels swelled across his throat. The corridor alarm changed pitch. Ruth's voice cut through the channel. He's beyond phase tolerance. Where's his nearest cooling point? Emergency exchange lock, 30 meters south. The map appeared. The exchange lock connected the geothermal corridor to the central chamber's emergency service shaft. It was also Doom's return route to Mecca. He ran south. I followed at half speed. Call saw it. Curator Holt, he said, you are losing distance. No. Doom glanced behind him. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to believe the heat had exhausted me. I stumbled once for the thermal feed. His pace increased. Ahead, the exchange lock door stood open, its interior lit blue. Cold vapor drifted across the floor. The only cooling point Ruth had left active. Doom entered. I stopped outside. The door began to close. His cloak faded. He turned. Understanding reached his face. The exchange lock was not a cooling chamber. It was a heat transfer buffer. The blue vapor was mineral suspension designed to protect human and Joriad workers from rapid temperature change. It would stabilize ordinary bodies. A phase cloak would interpret it as an infinite field of conflicting thermal data. Doom lunged for the door. I hit the emergency seal. The lock closed between us. His fist struck the transparent panel. The cloak convulsed. Black distortion folded around him, tightening instead of dispersing. Heat flooded through his suit. He tore at the controls on his chest. The chamber speakers carried his scream into the council hall. I could have opened the lock. For 2 seconds, I considered it. Then the emergency shaft behind Doom opened. Mecha stood at the far end. The chamber's service door had released exactly as Doom planned. She had ignored everyone and come to the lower level. Doom saw her. Even with the cloak burning into his body, he raised the weapon. The lock had a secondary personnel door beside the main seal. I opened it and stepped inside. Calls shouted through the channel. The heat struck like a wall. Doom turned the blade toward me. I had a clean path to his exposed throat. One forward step would end him. Mecha stood behind him. His weapon shifted toward her. I moved between them. The blade entered below my shoulder. Pain flashed white through my chest. I caught Doom's wrist and drove it downward. Mecha reached the external control panel. "What do I press?" she cried. "Purge." She struck the marked control. The exchange field activated. Thermal pressure slammed through the lock. Doom's cloak released every stored pattern at once. Light filled the chamber. His diplomatic layers burned away from the equipment beneath them. Hidden projectors, data cores, and council override keys dropped across the floor. The phase system fused to his back. Doom collapsed. I remained standing long enough to see his weapon slide from his hand. Then my knees hit the floor. Mecha entered as the lock cooled. She kicked the blade away and pressed both hands against my wound. The witness ember rested near Doom's body. Its cracked shell projected files into the steam. Orders, maps, council exemption codes. The full program of historical erasure spread across the walls, while delegates watched from the chamber above. Doom breathed in short, broken gasps. He was alive. His cloak was dead. So were the organs his species used to regulate rapid temperature change. The emergency display confirmed permanent damage before the medical teams arrived. Doom would never tolerate concealment equipment again. He would never cross a warm room without support. The attempt to erase a people by becoming unseen had left him unable to hide. Alien security entered with weapons raised. They looked at Doom, then at me, then at the biological warning still transmitted through the council channel. Human predatory response, uncontrolled escalation risk. I sat against the wall while Mecha held pressure against my shoulder. "Speaker," I said. Call's face appeared on the lock display. The 4 eyes that had studied me like a dangerous specimen now looked tired. "Curator Holt." "That classification." He glanced upward toward the words covering his chamber. "It was generated by the monitoring lattice." "You built the lattice." The council remained silent behind him. Call opened the public classification field. His hand hovered over the text. "Human predatory response," he read. "Reduced hesitation, narrowed attention, coordinated pursuit, elevated capacity for violence." His lower eyes moved toward the chamber floor, where human civilians still shielded witnesses and treated the wounded. "The recorded behaviors are accurate," he said. "The conclusion is..." Call selected the final phrase. uncontrolled escalation risk. He deleted it. For several seconds, the category remained unfinished. Then he entered new words. Target-bound protection. The revised classification spread across every wall in the council vault. Call faced the chamber. The instinct was real, he said. Our definition was false. No one applauded. The moment deserved better than applause. Medical teams carried me back into the hearing chamber after they sealed my wound. Doom was taken elsewhere under heavy thermal support. His arrest entered the record, but few delegates watched him leave. The evidence released from his equipment had already replaced him as the center of the proceeding. The ACRED territorial claim collapsed before the next cycle. The concealed files identified excavation teams, altered surveys, and council officials who had approved infrastructure exemptions without examining what the equipment contained. Speaker Call suspended the hearing. Mecca refused. She stood on the witness platform with dried blood on her sleeve, mine and Doom's, and placed the damaged witness ember back into its cradle. We have waited while governments decided whether our memories were respectable enough to become facts, she said. You have the facts now. Call lowered himself into his seat. Yes. The Joriad settlement existed. Yes. Our people were removed. Yes. Our names were erased from the maps. Yes. Mecca looked around the chamber, then finished the hearing. The vote took 11 minutes. The council recognized the Joriad claim, invalidated the ACRED administrative occupation, and established a protected reconstruction authority controlled by surviving Joriad communities. The political work would take years. Maps were easier to correct than power. Still, the first change happened before the chamber emptied. Council workers entered the inner ring with stone-cutting tools. A new seat had been authorized for a permanent Joriad representative. There was no space prepared for it, so the workers shifted the neighboring seats closer together. Delegations that had kept ceremonial distance for generations found themselves forced a few centimeters nearer to one another. Mecca watched without speaking. I sat beside her with my arm immobilized across my chest. Call approached us after the cutting ended. Curator Holt, he said, the record will state that you maintained control during a predatory activation. The record can state that I was afraid. His upper eyes narrowed. Fear did not appear to impair you. It doesn't have to. You pursued Envoy Doom through an unstable geothermal system. He was trying to reach Mecca. You entered the exchange lock when you possessed an opportunity to incapacitate him from outside. He was aiming at Mecca. Call studied me. So the target boundary remained constant. I looked toward the new Joriad seat. That phrase makes it sound mechanical. Our categories are mechanical. Then remember what they fail to measure. Mecca rose. She carried the witness ember to the new seat. The crack across its shell had dimmed several memory paths, though the core remained functional. A technician offered to connect it to the chamber display. Mecca declined. For generations, the ember had remained active during every petition, migration hearing, and historical review. Joriad custodians had kept it glowing because darkness gave governments permission to pretend nothing had been there. Mecca placed it at the center of the new seat. Then she pressed both hands against the shell. The amber light faded. The final memory disappeared from the chamber. No delegate objected. No one requested another demonstration. The ember sat dark on the new Joriad seat, and no one in the chamber asked it to prove that the people behind it had been real.